In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of man can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense. In 2015, it still is Common Sense.
I'm Mark Zaccaria.
And I'm Alyson Perry. This is Common Sense. Welcome back. We have a full show for you this week. Representative Patricia Morgan will conduct an in-depth interview with Bill Vernon of the National Federation of Independent Business on making it as an entrepreneur here in the Ocean State. Mark and I will also be sure to pop back in once or twice to ask the oft-repeated question, "Are you kidding me?" As always, the broadcast will wrap up with commentator Jeff Richard's whimsical take on the body politic. This week, Jeff focuses on problems in our hospitals. Before we get all that started, though, let's kick off with analysis of some of the top stories affecting Rhode Islanders this week. Mark?
Thanks, Allison. Writing in the Providence Journal last week, Kate Bramson filed a brief story on efforts by the newly created Rhode Island Commerce Corporation to make it easier on private companies to operate here in the Ocean State. Bramson suggested that the objective of the new Commerce Corporation initiative would be to counterbalance the ill effects of the thicket of regulatory, tax, and permit obligations faced by anyone wishing to open up shop here. Nowhere in the article was the word streamlining bandied about, so I guess we shouldn't be too surprised at the solution the article announced. The Commerce Corporation, itself a newly created and greatly expanded state bureaucracy, has now organized a new committee composed of representatives of all 26 state departments that have anything to say about your business here in Little Rhodey. Members of this new entity on the state org chart include representatives from the state departments of Administration, Environmental Management, Health, Labor and Training, Transportation, and more, plus the Coastal Resources Management Council, the Narragansett Bay Commission, the Contractors Registration and Licensing Board, the State Building Code Commission, and the Rhode Island Airport Corporation. Does this sound broadly technical and naturally contentious to you? The Commerce Corporation agrees. So they also hired an executive to manage all those team members, as well as a staff of 4 to support that position. So now, Elizabeth Tanner of Bristol is the Commerce Corp's Vice President of Customer Service at just over $98,000 per year. In short, the administration's solution to the problem of entangled bureaucracies scaring new business away was to graft a new umbrella bureaucracy on top of the entire existing bucket of worms. And it was all done at a new annual cost of hundreds of thousands of tax dollars per year. Cool. What do you think the over and under is on whether or not all problems of petty officials now vanish and an era of unprecedented economic expansion dawns like a new day? Allison?
Thank you, Mark. As you all may remember, a few weeks ago I briefly spoke about a hot issue with the fishing industry in Rhode Island. Now, I have some positive news to report. Recently, Newport Restaurant Week collaborated with Rhode Island Seafood, an organization associated with the Department of Environmental Management, to help support local fishermen and our economy. The organization has created the Rhode Island Seafood Seal, which will essentially be the stamp of approval that the local catch is indeed a local catch. The approved seafood will be available throughout the state, providing that the restaurant and the fishermen have taken the proper action for the seal. Once approved for the seal, the fish is inspected all throughout the supply chain in order to ensure quality catch all the way down the line. The Rhode Island Seafood Seal is a good step to help consumers ensure that the seafood they buy and eat is landed here in Rhode Island and supports local fishermen instead of supporting the economy of other countries.
Sounds like progress, miss. 2 weeks ago, at the state's biannual financial review, economics and rating agency Moody's presented its outlook for the near term here in Rhode Island. Last week, Ocean State Current editor and blogger Justin Katz analyzed the Moody's presentation. Most of the consultants' conclusions were predictable for their praise of their client. Moody's accepted the grossly deflated unemployment figures, suggesting that household income might soon be on an upswing. One thing, however, caught both Justin Katz's eye and mine. Moody's pointed with pleasure to their stats showing net population growth for Little Rhodey starting in 2014. Moody's themselves analyzed this indicator by terming it net migration. While the U.S. Census Bureau does estimate that in 2014, 1,375 more births occurred in Rhode Island than deaths, that's not what caught my eye. Moody's lists the net migration figure as plus 903 for that same year. In fact, they take the numbers even further. They identify 3,387 departures as compared to 4,290 new arrivals here in 2014. And yet, our labor participation rate sank further and further the whole while. Folks, our workers are leaving to seek work. Meanwhile, our state's generous welfare benefits are attracting non-workers to an easier life than they'd have elsewhere. Many, if not most, of these Rhodey immigrants come from foreign shores. It's great that they seek their fortunes here, but until those fortunes get made, their children bloat the public schools with the requirement for translators in more and more different languages. Now, we all know where the money to support those generous welfare payments is supposed to come from: the payroll taxes of working Rhode Islanders. Are you starting to see the problem? Ladies and gentlemen, we need a vibrant, growing local economy if we are to have any hope of financing our commitments to the safety net by the traditional means. To do that today requires bold leadership in the State House so we can retool the regulatory environment in which we expect these businesses to flourish so they can employ more and more of us, which will provide the tax base we need to power our benefits. If that doesn't happen, either we must drastically reduce state expenses for the safety net payments, or just sit back with our eyes closed and wait patiently for the economic apocalypse that will come along presently. To put it in Ocean State terms, we have 1 foot on the gunnel, 1 foot on the pier, and the boat is leaving. We have to jump one way or the other pretty darn quick. Alyson?
Thanks, Mark. I think. Before we move on to the first segment of Pat Morgan's interview this week, let's pause for a philosophical question, shall we? You know the question I have in mind. Are you kidding me?
This week, Channel 12 News reported that the state of Rhode Island and HP Enterprises had inked yet another contract to put even more money into the new Department of Motor Vehicles software package and IT system overhaul. The original agreement was made in 2008 for an $8.1 million project to be delivered in 2010. Now we're talking a bit more than twice that dollar figure when the system is all done, maybe a year from now. Are you kidding me? Part of the reason it's so much fun to visit the DMV is that you get another chance to be a victim of the agency's quaint 35-year-old digital systems. That's the main reason it takes forever to get anything done as a retail customer. The long, sad story behind the development of the replacement system is one of ever-changing customer specifications, constantly evolving levels of technology, and bureaucratic ineptitude. Sure, the vendor bears some responsibility for this debacle. The contract went through the hands of 3 different corporate entities and outlasted the life cycles of at least a couple of hardware technologies. The real problem was with the Rhode Island state government, though. 3 different administrations had a hand in mucking things up, and all the way along, no one in state government really knew what they were looking at, so no really effective actions were taken to move the project ahead. Now that we have yet another contract in place, we'll follow the progress of the development to its new projected completion date of September 2016. For my money, though, it's not a lack of institutional wisdom on digital technology that doomed the bureaucracy. It's more of an attitude of not really caring about making project waypoints on time and providing testing and transactional support to the developer. This is too big and complex a technical expansion to be left in the hands of folks who go home at 4:30 every day. The state workers charged with overseeing this project were not invested in it at all, nor were they interested in putting in nights, weekends, and holidays to get it done. That's a problem of corporate culture that would be a sea anchor on any customer-vendor relationship. Until some real leadership changes that lethargic norm, all we'll be able to say when reviewing the progress of any complex effort by state government is, are you kidding me?
All right, hi. Hi, my name is Blake Filippi. I'm the state representative from District 36, which includes Block Island, Charlestown, South Kingstown, and Westerly. One of the places where the RPG, the Republican Policy Group's No Tolls Bridge Plan, acquires money from in the current state budget is the Rhode Island Capital Asset Protection Plan. And what RICAP basically is that every year 3% of our budget goes into our rainy day fund, and then everything beyond that goes into RICAP, and it's spent on capital improvements throughout our state. And what we propose in years 6 through 10 of our bridge proposal plan, we appropriate only $25 million of the RICAP funds, leaving $90 million to continue capital asset protection throughout the state. It's a small amount of money for the critical infrastructure needs that we need to undertake.
Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solution. And today we have with us Bill Vernon from the National Federation of Independent Businesses, which is an advocacy group that tries to help small businesses. And we know that in Rhode Island they need a lot of help. This week, Bill, we've been, well, welcome.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming. This last couple of weeks, we've been trying to focus on small businesses and some of the challenges that they face in Rhode Island. And it's pretty clear that we've done a lot of things wrong over the last few decades in Rhode Island, things that really hurt small business. If we look at all of those ratings that we get, and there are so many of them out there right now, we're bouncing along the bottom. And if you talk to small businesses, they talk about not just a bad environment, but a hostile one where they're always playing defense, and where people, especially people in government, look at them like they're the bad guys. It's just a really bad culture here. And I know you've been working a long time trying to do the things that bring us up from the bottom and change that climate that we have. You know, what do you think are some of the... We've talked about regulatory reform a lot. A couple of years ago, I put forward a bill that I thought would help we have to do a cost-benefit analysis. And yet I haven't seen much movement. Do you think there's been a lot of movement?
Yeah, I do think there's been some movement. Regulatory reform is hard work. It's work that requires a stick-to-itiveness that's extraordinary. You have to go through it line by line. You're fighting or challenging people in government who've been doing these jobs sometimes for a very long time.
It's how we've always done it.
It's how we've done it. And so you have to make the case, and then you have to put the teeth behind the case that you're making, that there has to be change. Obviously, I think if Rhode Island looks to other states, they can see the way other states do it and copy to some extent. But Rhode Island also we have to make our changes the way
I think we have to
them
clean out some of our regulations.
The first thing is to the overall review, which we've gone through, and that again is a constant. We've gone through it once. We have to go through it constantly, to go through our regulations to see that that the cost-benefit analysis does make sense, that they continue to make sense, it's efficient and for the state of Rhode Island, and it's necessary. They've made a lot of progress. I think there's about 30 occupational licenses that we eliminated last year.
We did.
And there's another list of 30 that may not, by the time it gets to the legislature, might be less than that. But first of all, it says how many occupational licenses are there in Rhode Island?
Yeah, we just proliferated them with no reason for them.
Right. License is a perfect example. I think public health and public safety is that there's no demand for public health and public safety, then you ought to get rid of it. The idea of licensing, for example, which is a nationwide movement to license designers, home designers, is just, to me, just beyond the pale.
Well, it's about setting up barriers, right?
Right. They become barriers to entry.
They become barriers to entry, and I guess the people that are in the occupations like that because they don't want the competition.
Right.
But competition is good,
And
right? On so many levels, not on just the cost level, but also on excellence
Right.
performance.
Improves quality, lowers cost. But that's an example where the resistance to change is not only within the government, it comes from outside the government. People who, as you say...
And then professions that can
prefer-
lobby government.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just shows you how difficult and how long it takes to do regulatory reform.
You know,
We
but,
need-
but do we have the time? And again, you know, you and I have spoken a lot. I don't think Rhode Island has the time. We got rid of a regulation about water heaters
Yes.
in the last session. Was it last session or
sessions
two
ago.
sessions ago? What did it take? 3 years to get
Oh,
rid of that?
at least.
4 years to get
At
rid of
least,
that?
at least.
We don't
We have
have
the-
the time as a state to take 4 years to get rid of a regulation that made no sense when it was first put in.
And you touch on another issue, which is a lot of these regulations are statutory based, so that they need the General Assembly to act. It's not only the Raimondo administration who needs to change the regulation. They can't change the regulation because the law says that this should be this way. So these are just more of the burdens. Rhode Island's not alone in this in terms of overregulation. I mean, other states do it. It's just that, and I would commend Rhode Island, the Raimondo administration and the prior administration for making some progress, particularly the current administration, on this. But it needs everybody to contact their legislator. Small business
Yeah.
owners know.
We need to break open the dam though, because just, you know, allowing one fish at a time to go over the top
Yeah.
isn't enough.
Do you know, we don't even have a code of regulations in this state. We don't even have them written down. We need that. We need e-permitting, which is now being tried in a number of communities. We need to expand that to statewide. We need a path for small business owners to know, what type of licenses and fees have to be paid, so that they will.
But we
know
also
that.
need to cut down on the fees, right? I mean, it's it doesn't sound like $40 for this, $70 for that, $250 for this, another $125 for that. Doesn't sound like a lot of money when you're first doing it. Oh, it's, less than 0.5%, but it adds up. And when you're a little business, right, trying to grow, that sucks away your ability to grow, right? That cash that you throw to these unproductive fees could be used to buy a piece of equipment or, start somebody part-time and have them grow to full-time employment.
And it's also discouraging, and that's
Yeah.
Small business owners, entrepreneurs will spend 14, 16 hours a day especially when they're starting their business, and to have that drip, drip, drip is not
Death
only
by 1,000 cuts.
right. It's not only expensive; it's discouraging.
It's discouraging. One of the things that I have really tried to focus some attention on in the last few years is legal reform as well. There's litigation risk out there. And when we talk about tort reform, I'm not talking about medical tort. I'm just talking about how uneven it is against the business community in our legal system.
One of the great fears of small business owners is a lawsuit. The reason for that is that they, even if they win the lawsuit, they lose because they've paid for lawyers, they've paid time away from the business, they'll have insurance problems, so even that is a loss.
And actually, we went to the courthouse and we documented suits, and the 18% interest from the day it happened, not from the day the suit was filed. There's just so many things that we do that are harmful.
The best way to make money in Rhode Island is to file a lawsuit, wait, and don't settle for years and get your 18% a year. It's pretty good.
That's right. And other states have already made changes, and we can't get it through because we have too many lawyers in the General Assembly, I guess. But we'll stop on that before I get myself into trouble, and we'll come back in just a minute.
Folks, disaster preparedness has been a topic near and dear to my heart for a long time now. Whether it be protecting our power grid, reacting to medical disasters, or responding to terrorism, preparedness is next to prevention. We can't prevent natural threats, but we can most certainly prepare for them. So this brings me to my first question of the night. What have we done to recover from last winter, save from patch up a few potholes? And even worse, what have we done to prepare for this coming winter? As the snowy season approaches, we have taken little to no precautions against the impending winter weather that we all know will be here soon. With severe weather threatening the Midwest, we should be taking every precaution possible against this coming winter, yet we have done nothing. Are you kidding me? Rhode Island, we should be worried. We should be stocking up on canned goods. We should be checking up on our elderly and disabled neighbors, ensuring that they know that there is a safe place to go should a natural disaster strike. We should be buying generators, and the government we trust so faithfully should be taking the due diligence that they did not take last year. Shouldn't we have learned from this past year mistakes? Are you kidding me?
Cut.
Welcome back to Common Sense. Today we have with us Bill Vernon, who is with the National Federation of Independent Businesses, which is a group that tries to help small businesses thrive in Rhode Island. Tough to do in our little state. And today we're just really talking about some of the challenges that small businesses face. They account for more than 50% of the jobs in Rhode Island. So we want them to do well and we want them to grow. You know, Bill, a couple of years ago, I was sitting getting my hair done, and my hairdresser said, "So what are you going to do for a small business?" And I said to her, "Well, what would you like me to do?" And she said, "Taxes." Right? She said taxes are hurting her. Now, she's just a hairdresser, but it's a small business, right? She had a little building, and she has a couple of other people working with her. Those are jobs. And her biggest problem was taxes, right? The profit that she made, or the income that she made, about a 12th of it, 10% of it, was going out to taxes.
Sure.
And a lot of that is actually driven from the state level, but also from the city level. So, I mean, what do you see as some of the keys there, the challenges? What are the opportunities?
The tax problem is, as you say, on both state and local level, especially in Rhode Island. The property tax in Rhode Island is something that we really have not addressed. I think the House has passed a legislation to create a property tax commission to look at the rates and but also the exemptions, the classifications, the valuation process. And we need to do that. It's so different when you go from town to town and municipality to municipality, and so it's very uneven. So I think that's one that has to be looked at. A business owner is also very concerned about payroll taxes, because that determines how much it costs to hire somebody to create a job.
So payroll taxes, what are you talking about?
Workers' comp, unemployment insurance, those taxes that an employer has to pay on each and every employee and each and every worker.
And it's a percentage of the
It depends.
of the payroll.
It depends on the type of business you're in.
Okay.
If you're in a particular danger, a roofer will pay much higher workers' comp than say a lawyer or any office worker. So a builder will pay lower workers' comp for a person who works in the office than they would for somebody who's out.
Yeah, I've actually looked at the unemployment insurance a little bit in Rhode Island, and my understanding is we have one of the most generous around, and it's kind of uneven. There are 10 levels, and kind of the top 9 levels subsidize the 10th level, which takes out far more, millions and millions, tens of millions more than they put in.
Unemployment insurance, I think, is one of the more complicated issues, probably exceeded only by workers' comp. But unemployment insurance, first of all, is paid by the employer, A lot of people don't understand that. And it's benefits that are available to a person who loses their job through no fault of their own. And in Rhode Island, and again, people who use the system, businesses that use the system a lot, there's a lot of seasonal people who go on unemployment insurance for a short period of time, every year.
Every year.
Frequent flyers. And those businesses that use the system, we call it experience rating, and those businesses pay more, as they should. But actually, those businesses that never have laid anybody off, those family businesses, small businesses, the business owner, doesn't take money, doesn't take
Ever.
a paycheck
Yeah.
to keep somebody at the job during the slow times. Those people are still subsidizing the businesses that
The
use
more
system.
seasonal, the seasonal
system.
businesses.
Well, it's not only seasonal, whatever, construction. The people who use it more where people are laid off. So we need to look at our unemployment insurance tax. I think it was 49th in the country in those, as you say, ubiquitous sort of ratings that come. But I don't look at any one rating, but when rating after rating after rating says that Rhode Island has a bad business climate and Rhode Island has the worst unemployment insurance system in the country, then or the
You
second
need to
worst,
do something
you need to
about
do
it, and
something
it's
about
not because we don't want people who lose their jobs to have that safety net, but it is about the fact that every time you take more from a small business than its competitors maybe in a neighboring state,
We have to
you
make
weaken
sure-
it, and you weaken their ability to be
You
strong
have to make
and
sure
grow.
that the benefits go to the person who loses the job, who's a head of household, who's the primary
And who's really
wage
trying to
earner.
find another job.
Right. And the primary wage, that goes to benefit structure. Are we putting the benefits where they want to be? We have to look at rates. We have to look at, there's something called a reserve. Rhode Island puts excessive amounts in the reserve, which means that employers are paying more to put this in unemployment insurance to have in reserve. It's safe when times go bad, when there's higher unemployment, there's additional money there. But are we putting too much in there? So it's into essentially an inert fund, instead of leaving it in the employer's hands so he can invest in the business.
They need to invest in their business. At some point, how do you grow? You have to have money to buy the new machine or whatever. You had mentioned so that's unemployment and workman's comp taxes. There's property taxes, which you kind of mentioned.
Yeah,
They're
property
pretty
taxes
high.
are, and they're different from municipality to municipality. It's a problem in Rhode Island. I would say that for small business owners, it's probably the largest tax problem, probably more important than the income tax. There's a limited role for the legislature in this, but I think that they can certainly lead and
But there are things that we do in the State House that actually contribute to the high property taxes. One of them is the disability pensions, quite frankly, that to me make no sense. Right? When somebody is really hurt on the job, we want to really take care of them. There's not a person in Rhode Island who says that a public employee who gets hurt on the job shouldn't get that benefit. But then we see people who say their shoulder is hurt and they're out, lifting weights, or their back is hurt but they're riding motorcycles. They're too generous, right? And that's run from the state level, quite frankly.
Right. Yeah, you have TDI and TCI in Rhode Island, which temporary disability insurance and also temporary caregiver insurance now, funded by employees. And those are programs that other states, frankly, are beginning to copy. They've been in existence, the TDI in Rhode Island, for decades. So I think that's something that employers are used to and comfortable with. But I think at all times we have to be careful on how the expenditures go and make sure that it's competitive, because those products are also available in the private sector, and we have to make sure the costs are competitive to protect the employees.
Yeah, we're one of
income.
only 5 states that have a state-sponsored TDI program. All the other states are run by by
Mm,
private
okay.
insurance
Right.
companies, and then if an employee wants to pay for it, they can. It's made available to them, but it doesn't run through the bureaucracy.
Right, exactly.
Bureaucracies tend to be inefficient. They do tend to be inefficient. And we're going to take a break right now, and we will be right back.
I've been barking about government overreach for years. One of the most irritating things to me are government regulations with which it is impossible to comply. Doubters always take that comment as proof of my detachment from reality. How can that be, they ask. How do I respond? Are you kidding me? Okay, here's just one case in point. A colleague of mine has a really involved hobby. He buys antique automobiles and restores them. Most of the cars he buys are rusted hulks that have been sitting in a field someplace. Usually they have no engines, and frequently they are sprouting foliage through either the passenger or engine compartments. As you might imagine, the restoration process takes years. When the proud day comes that one of his derelicts is once again ready to be king of the road, he registers him. His payoff for all that solitary therapy in his garage is a few miles around town to attract some admiring looks. The problem is that when he registers one of his reclaimed treasures, he has to pay a criminal fine of at least $500 before DMV will give him his plates. His misdeed? The registry gives you 20 days to register and inspect an automobile after the date of its purchase. My buddy blows that out of the water because he doesn't want a car that runs. That would take all the fun out of it. Is there anyone in the audience who does not think an exception should be made for automotive restoration? Believe me, he's tried. Apparently, the General Assembly doesn't want to waste time on a gimme like this. They'd rather cook up wasteful spending schemes like the Big Bond than work on unintended consequences of existing legislation. You might say that this glitch affects only a small number of Rhode Islanders, but to me, it's more about the I don't care attitude. Do you know what the helpful clerks at the DMV suggest out loud when asked about the fine by the owner of a stored vehicle or one that's been in the shop for a long while? Hey, just make up a new bill of sale with today's date. Are you kidding me?
Just keep doing it. That's right.
Yep.
Welcome back to Common Sense. Today we have with us Bill Vernon from the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. Sounds just like what it is. He's here to advocate for small businesses and try to make their lives as companies, as little businesses, better in Rhode Island. We have made some progress on the tax front in the last couple of years with estate tax.
Yes.
Why was that important?
It's very important for small businesses, the estate tax issue, because it is inherently unfair to small businesses, and it's a liquidity problem. Small businesses' assets are tied up in buildings, equipment, real estate, and it's not available to pay estate taxes when a person dies. So as a result, if there is an estate tax then it affects the family of the small business owner or the employees and the jobs that go with that small business. Another result is that during the small business owner's life, a lot of resources are spent on insurance and tax planning, estate planning. So
planning means
for
lawyer
all those
fees.
reasons. And then finally, I would say, and not finally because the arguments on this go on and on and on, but another huge factor is that Rhode Island, with at the time one of the lowest, if not the lowest, exemptions, which was disappearing as you took it, was driving people, productive people, wealthier people out of the state of Rhode Island. There are very few states that even have an estate tax. I say this to most people. The number of states with an estate tax and or an inheritance tax is under 20.
Yeah.
And they are disappearing. And number of those states that do have an estate tax are now going to the federal exemption, which is over $5 million tied to inflation. And so it's an issue that Rhode Island is really out of step with, and even raising the exemption to $1.5 million, which you did, the reform was.
It's not enough.
It's not enough. It needs to be addressed again.
Yeah, we actually removed the estate tax from farms. And everybody could see the value there, because you don't want to take farms tied up in real estate, right? The farmer, the owner dies, they have to start selling off pieces of the farm, and then you don't have a working farm anymore.
You were
So we
valuing
saw that.
farms at what the value was, what it would be if you divided it up into house lots
Into housing lots.
rather than the value of the farm.
Right, so we actually changed that because we saw that you want to keep a farm together.
Yes.
Same thing applies to small businesses, right? The owner dies, what do you got to sell off pieces of furniture, a building, a truck in order to pay the estate tax? Well, when you do that, the people who work on that machine or drive that truck, they have to go too. They don't have a job anymore.
Right.
It just takes away the vitality of a company and its ability to continue existing. $1.5 million is not enough. I think it should be at least $5 million. I'd love to see it go all together.
As I said, more than 30 states have no estate tax. A number of the states that do have an estate tax have the federal exemption, which is $5.4 million, make it equal to the federal, which also makes planning easier. And so it's a dwindling number of states, and Rhode Island continues to be near the bottom in terms of the size of its
and if we
exemption.
really want to help small businesses, we have to make sure that piece of it is fixed, because you don't want a company to be cut in half because the main owner dies.
Now, a lot of our people saying $1.5 million, are you kidding me? But if once you add up your residence, your life insurance, and then if you have a small business, the equipment and the property.
A couple of trucks, some machinery alone
Right.
costs $500,000.
Exactly.
Right? You get up there pretty quickly.
They're very fast.
And actually, we want businesses that are worth $5 million here, because that means they have many employees, right? You don't want just ones that are worth $100,000 or $200,000. You want
We like those
ones
ones
that
and
grow.
twos. They're good.
No, I
advertising
like them
numbers.
too. No,
But
I'm not
but we
denigrating them.
we also like businesses.
But you
that are
want to
10
know
or
that they're
15
growing.
Hire,
Right.
that employ 10, 15,
Sure.
20, 25, 30 people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Inventory. One more on taxes, and then we'll move on. But there's the inventory tax, or in towns it's also called the tangible tax. How is that hurting Rhode Island?
The tangible property tax is very uneven applied in town and municipality after municipality. It needs to be regulated and applied more evenly.
I think it needs to go away, quite
The
frankly.
tangible property, the inventory tax, I think all you have to do is go up 146 and see Walmart. I know that I think
Amazon went to Fall River.
FedEx has gone to Seekonk.
So they're all
yes.
in Massachusetts, which doesn't have an inventory tax. They're not here. And it's the jobs that could be here. It's actually property taxes if they were here too. And we're missing all of it. Short-sighted.
Rhode Island, yes, and these are the types of policies, and we've talked a lot of them, that Rhode Island really has to stop and think about the economic consequences before they jump.
Do we do that?
Not enough.
Not enough, not enough. And talking about economic consequences, you know that I've been really involved in the tolling issue. We shouldn't have tolls here in Rhode Island, my opinion. I think it hurts small businesses. Our small manufacturers get a lot of trucks coming in and delivering things, and then those trucks come back and take the finished goods out. So it would hurt our small manufacturers. It would hurt our retailers. These are a lot of small businesses.
Yes.
What do you think about the tolling proposal? And you better answer right now.
My first complaint, I
Thank you,
suppose, is that I feel like we don't have a tolling proposal. We have some sort of idea out there that without any specifics. So it's hard to react to a tolling quote proposal because I don't think we have one, and we do have problems with our roads and bridges that need to be repaired. But I would point out that, as you do, that I think that a restaurant, like say Twin Oaks,
A lot of
has
trucks.
a lot of deliveries every single day. And if it's $5, $10, $15, $20 added on to every delivery, then daily that's going to be hundreds of dollars for that particular business. And that's one business. And so we have to be exceedingly careful about adding expenses. It's an expensive state to do business with to begin with, and we have to be exceedingly careful about adding expenses that are going to make it more and more difficult.
Well, and you
to
talk
hire
about it
people.
being $20 here, $40 there added. It's actually 60 to 80 million a year is what they're thinking of grabbing from our economy. So I know that I've heard that argument from the Democrats all the time. Oh, it's only 25 cents per gallon of gas, or per tank of gas. Oh, it'll cost less than $1 a week for the average family. The point is, no, it's 60 to 80 million dollars coming out of our economy every year, and that's not chump change.
Rhode Island already charges with taxes and fees taxes at all levels, a very high amount to live here and to work here. I think we need to be more careful about how we spend what we already have.
Oh, good idea. All right, and with that wonderful piece of advice, we're going to take a break and we'll come right back.
I've said it before and I will say it again. We should be absolutely disgusted with the youth of America. Sadly, it's my own generation that we should be so disgusted with. The millennials, the new kids on the block, the kids who should be innovating and solving the problems of the world. Instead, what do? Well, friends, I'll tell you what we do instead. Instead of creating a positive change, the people of my own generation are creating a horrible reputation. There are members of my generation that like to create panic, chaos, and threats on apps such as Twitter, Facebook, and Yik Yak. Are you kidding me? Last week, Northwest Missouri State University experienced a small scare from two separate individuals. Each individual threatened guns and violence on two separate campuses. This, my friends, is what the newest generation of adults look like. They don't look like the hardworking individuals of their parents' generation. They look like entitled lowlives that think they can get away with making threats such as these for their own amusement. As always, friends, this begs the question, are you kidding me?
Unfortunately, without taking the time necessary for a thorough analysis, Speaker Mattiello dismissed the Republicans' responsible plan to fix Rhode Island's bridges. While there is always a political edge in the General Assembly, the office of Speaker must transcend partisan politics, and we all must put electioneering aside when we consider issues that profoundly affect our economic stability and public safety. We remain committed to open dialogue with all, regardless of political affiliation, in order to reach common ground and stop the damage that tolls and massive debt financing will wreak on our state's taxpayers, consumers, small businesses, and trucking industry. The Republican Policy Group spent this past summer refining our bridge repair plan. At its core, our plan calls on government to do what many of our families and neighbors must: tighten belts and prioritize. The money already exists in our current state budget to do the necessary repairs, and we have shown how this can be responsibly accomplished. We don't cut one social program or any critical government functions. We do not resort to the tolls or substantial debt proposed by Governor Raimondo. As a member of the Finance Committee, I am acutely aware that our state has a projected deficit for future years. We surely won't cure it by burdening our citizens with over $1.3 billion in debt and hampering our already stagnant economy with the increased costs of consumer goods and raw materials from tolls. That type of thinking is exactly what has gotten us into this mess. Instead, we must institute structural changes to the way we run government, including the modification and elimination of laws, regulations, and practices that are strangling our state's competitiveness, demanding value out of each tax dollar and using it effectively and efficiently, educating a 21st century workforce and attracting 21st century job creators, and skillfully promoting our hospitality and tourism sector. The Republicans are willing partners in any effort that improves Rhode Island's business climate and grows our economy. Adding tolls and more debt will be just more millstones on our financial security. A few years ago, the General Assembly recognized that heavy transportation borrowing was a major factor to our state's budget deficits. We wisely changed course and began to fund our federal highway match from current resources without borrowing. The governor's debt-laden toll proposal will take us backwards by requiring our state to pay more than $1.3 billion over 30 years for only $620 million today. With history as our guide, it is quite clear this won't help our future deficits. Over time, it will make them worse. The state already takes enough money from taxpayers to repair our bridges. We don't need to borrow more. The Republican plan details funding from existing revenue if Rhode Island's leaders make a 10-year commitment to prioritize bridges and get the job done. We can prevent a debt disaster for future generations, eliminate the need for tolls, and make the desperately needed bridge repairs. Welcome back to Common Sense. Today we have with us Bill Vernon, who is the Executive Director for the NFIB, which is the National Federation of Independent Businesses. You're an advocate for small businesses. You're trying to make it easier for them to be here in Rhode Island. And we appreciate the work you do, because small businesses are where we get a lot of jobs in Rhode Island. We've been talking about some of the opportunities, challenges. Energy is a really big item that many small businesses complain to me about, quite frankly, how expensive energy is in Rhode Island. We've had some movement there to help them, but clearly not enough. What do you see as some of the issues there?
Energy is a regional problem. It's a New England problem, and it needs a New England solution. One of the things that's really changed over the past couple of decades is the shift from oil to natural gas. The availability of natural gas, the cost of natural gas has
really come down.
Has come down, and so it is a much more popular form of energy, a much more popular way to power our power plants. So we need to get, first of all, as a base fuel, we need to get more natural gas into Massachusetts and Rhode Island, particularly. And the governor has led the charge, not without some criticism. I applaud her for that.
Yeah, it's been very difficult, though. They just want to build a companion pipeline to the one that's already there, and it gets stuck in litigation all the way back to New York State.
The problem is, we will be at the end of the pipeline, but the pipeline isn't long. It's not from Texas or Louisiana. The pipeline is from Pennsylvania, where that low-cost natural gas is available in Pennsylvania and Ohio. We need to get it over.
And there's already a pipeline. They just want to put this one right beside it, right?
We want to augment it and get expanded access to natural gas. What happened last winter?
Went up 24%, our electric bills,
because
right?
our natural gas has to come from ships, and we need to expand the pipeline to bring it in more cheaply and more efficiently and more effectively.
And that's going back to the small business. They prioritize residential gas use. Makes some sense. We don't want people getting hypothermia in their homes. But by prioritizing residentials, then our small businesses, our commercial customers, have that constraint. The whole thing just gets more expensive then.
And it does, because then they have to use the more expensive and less clean fuel to power, to provide the energy. So actually, expanded pipelines is good for the environment, because then you're not using oil or coal or other carbon-based fuels to provide your energy.
Sure.
But we really in New England and in Rhode Island need all forms of energy.
All of them.
We need them all. We need hydropower from Quebec.
And we're having trouble getting the hydro down from Quebec. Why is that? Because our neighbors get it. Why aren't we getting it?
It's a transmission issue, transmitting the power from Quebec through northern New England down to Massachusetts and Rhode Island.
But again, our neighbors get it. It's
Yeah.
just a little bit farther to Rhode Island to
Right.
bring it here.
But we need to
We've
get
been trying,
more.
I think
Yeah.
Governor Chafee mentioned it maybe 5 years ago that he wanted to do it, and it's still stalled. That would really help us. Can't we work with our neighbors to?
There are regular meetings going on with the 6 New England governors, and I think the 5 or 6, I'm sorry, I'm not up on my Canadian provinces, of Eastern Canada, premiers working together to try to solve that
To
problem.
unlock it, okay, because that would really be a big help. I'm a big fan of hydro. It's clean
Yeah.
and it's abundant, and just get it
And
here.
Quebec is a big fan of selling it to us too, so it's just getting it. The other, we need solar, we need wind.
But we
need
can't
them all.
have too much reliance on renewables. I think renewables are fine. The problem with them is they're so much more expensive than electricity generated from gas. I think it's like 3 and 4 times more expensive. They're not free. Everybody says, well, the wind is free. Yeah, but the windmill is not.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that offshore wind in particular is expensive 3 or 4 times. Onshore wind makes some sense. I think solar
Only
makes
in
some
large,
sense.
large farms. I think one in Maine actually is competitive, but these onesies and twosies, they're not
Well, they can't
competitive.
compete with natural
They're
gas,
3 and
that's
4
for sure.
times more expensive.
They can't compete with natural gas. But I would also
I have to
say-
think not just about your small businesses, I have to think about the folks in my district as well.
Well, this
who-
is a residential
They get an
issue.
electric bill and they're going, oh my gosh, you know, I can't buy meat for the table this week because I have to pay my electric bill.
One of the problems that is unique to Rhode Island is the energy efficiency charge, which is about $100 million in total to ratepayers.
What is that?
That's a charge that everybody has for energy efficiency. Most states have it, and certainly in New England they do, but Rhode Island's is high. And so it's a charge added every month on your bill to provide money to make.
Oh, this
homes
is
and
where the
businesses
letters
more
come to tell me
efficient.
that I am one of the best in my neighborhood with energy usage.
We
But
need to
I
make that
keep
competitive
wondering-
with other states.
I keep wondering why I'm getting this letter.
Yeah.
Does it really drive behavior? I don't know.
Well, I think that we just need to be
It's a lot of
competitive
money,
with other
100
states.
million, yeah.
And if our business, we expect our businesses to compete, we need to have our charges, again, just like taxes competitive.
And if you lower electricity or energy costs, you help not only small businesses, large businesses, you help residential as well. It's something that really, I think it's a really important issue. And I'm just wondering why we're having such a hard time getting more natural gas or hydro down here. It's something we should have been working on for the last 20 years. We knew there was a problem.
Right, we know it's a problem, but people flick on the light and or turn on the heat, and there it is, and so they don't worry about it until we get times like last winter when prices went through the roof.
Through the
in a very
roof,
short period
really,
of time.
really hurt. But like you said, there's 100 million there. If we get tolls, there's another 60 or 80 million. It starts being a real burden on all of us, right? A toll, an energy charge, is just another form of tax.
It's Rhode Island's issues from a small business point of view, I think, are the cost of doing business, the cost of hiring somebody, the cost of creating a job, the cost of growing a business and becoming more profitable, which means more money for the state, which means more money for people and workers.
When you grow, you are able to make more jobs,
Exactly.
and that helps the state. Well, listen, our time is up. I want to thank you very much for coming. We really need to work, and I'm so glad you're up at the State House helping me, because we really need to work on the hostile environment that we have in Rhode Island for small businesses. We have a lot of targets to go after, and I don't think our state has a lot of time to waste.
Well, first of all, small businesses owners are generally very, very positive. They have to be, to get up every day and do what they do for their communities and for their business and for the people that work for them, their families and their extended families. And I just hope everybody will get out there on Small Business Saturday in a couple of weeks, on Saturday after Thanksgiving.
The Saturday after Thanksgiving,
And
go support your small businesses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A reminder, Small Business Saturday is Saturday, November 28th. Support local businesses. It's good for you, good for them, and good for Rhode Island.
Greetings, I'm Jeffrey Shard. I'd like to comment today on why it is a bad idea to go to the hospital. Now, here's the really bad news. 75,000 patients die every year due to infections acquired in the hospital. Now, in 2011, 722,000 cases of hospital-acquired infections were reported by the Center for Disease Control. Now, that was the latest year that the CDC had data for. On any given day, 1 in 25 hospital patients becomes infected. Boy, those are bad odds. So what's happening? Seems we don't clean out our hospitals very well, and we overdose with antibiotics. How bad is it? Let's take the belief we all seem to have that antibiotics will cure all of our illnesses. Seems then that our antibiotic overuse, and sometimes inappropriate use, bears a heavy responsibility for creating the superbugs that are resistant to lots of antibiotics. And if you were not aware, tens of millions of pounds of antibiotics are administered to American livestock every year. And their use isn't just to keep them healthy. Seems the antibiotics make the animals grow bigger faster. 80% of all the antibiotics in the United States are used by the agricultural industry. So what you eat may be killing you. Now, the CDC has concluded that as much as 22% of antibiotic-resistant illness in humans is in fact linked to food. They also reported that a staggering 2 million American adults and kids become infected with antibiotic-resistant bacteria each year, and at least 23,000 of them die as a direct result of the infections. Now, it seems that the hospitals are undoubtedly among the most dangerous places to find these bacteria. Now, the powerful broad-spectrum antibiotics used today kill the bad bacteria that makes us sick, but it also kills the good bacteria in our systems, leaving us vulnerable. Many doctors are taking new approaches to prescribing antibiotics to try and reduce the increasing resistance problems. Now, what are they doing in the hospitals to clean things up? Well, as Betsy McCoffey, founder of the Committee to Reduce Infection Deaths, says, quote, "If you are visiting someone in the hospital, forget the flowers and the candy. Bring bleach swipes. It could save the patient's life." Several hospitals are going back to bleach as the cure for bad bugs. So if you smell bleach when you are roaming the hospital corridors, that's a good thing. Now, if you have to check in to a hospital, do it during the week. Seems that there have been studies that have determined that if you check in over the weekend, you are more likely to die within 30 days compared to those who check in during the week. Now, the U.S. statistic in this department was 13%. So this weekend effect has been studied a bunch and is generally accepted as truth. Seems some testing that might occur routinely when all staff are present during the week might not happen over the weekend. Things like same-day brain scans or clotting treatments. Okay, so I have learned that I shouldn't go near a hospital unless it is absolutely necessary. And once I get there, I should use a bleach swipe before I touch anything. And I shouldn't let anybody touch me. Well, don't know how that's going to work. And I know that I have to question my doctor anytime he suggests an antibiotic to cure what ails me. Learned a lot today. Thanks for watching, and God bless.